All right, here we go. Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you. Hope all of your weeks are off to a great start, and you've recovered from that ugly loss on Sunday Night Football to the Buffalo Bills. The snow was coming down, and the Niners were melting. Here's what we have coming your way on the show. Adam Schefter with a new report on the Pat McAfee Show about the status around General Manager John Lynch and head coach Kyle Shanahan. We have a Christian McCaffrey injury update from his dad. And where does San Francisco go from here? We'll take a look at the NFC playoff picture to see how things are shaking out for the Niners. I want to begin with this, though. Are you frustrated? Are you angry? This has been a season from hell for the Niners. So if you are ticked off, I want you to take your anger out and smash that thumbs up icon like the video right now. As for the status around Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, let's begin with that topic here on today's show. Adam Schefter on the Pat McAfee Show, and they were having a conversation about the Niners' struggles and how San Francisco has had this awful season, coming off a Super Bowl run last year in which they were a couple of plays away from beating the Chiefs back in February in Las Vegas. If they were to have won that game, the conversation around this organization would be so much different, even if the Niners season had gone the way that it's gone so far, with San Francisco being 5-7. But when you lose a heartbreaking Super Bowl in that manner, a game that you had within your grasp, on your fingertips, and you blew it, the fan base will pile on because this fan base wants to see this organization capture their 6th Lombardi trophy. And here's kind of where the Niners are at right now. 3 straight losses in back-to-back defeats on the road against Green Bay, on the road against Buffalo. It looked like the Niners didn't want to get off the plane. It looked as though they wanted to stay in their bed and stay warm during the cold weather in Wisconsin and in New York. And they have gotten dump trucked in the last 2 matchups. 38-10 at the hands of the Green Bay Packers. You thought it was going to get worse or better? It got worse. I thought that game against Buffalo was even worse than that loss against Green Bay. 35-10. San Francisco is now going to miss the playoffs after making it to the Super Bowl last year. And going into 2024, they were the odds-on favorite to become Super Bowl champions. Roster depth is a concern that's on John Lynch and this front office. And Kyle Shanahan has had a bad year. You've had to deal with a lot of injuries. Some players that you were hoping to develop haven't developed. And really, when you think about this 2024 campaign, it's been a collective failure at every level of this organization. Going all the way back to the offseason with the whole Brandon Aiyuk contract situation, the Trent Williams contract situation, that caused unneeded drama. And the vibes have just been off with this team for a very long time. I don't think the front office did a good enough job of adding depth and marquee players to this team. The coaching staff, Kyle Shanahan, Nick Sorensen, Brian Schneider, the special teams coordinator, they've all failed. And then the players have also failed to execute, shooting themselves in the foot, turning the football over, just committing self-inflicted wounds, not executing and making the necessary plays. And so when I think about this year for San Francisco, it's just an F all across the board. But does that mean that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are on the hot seat? Not according to Adam Schefter, who said this when engaged in a dialogue with Pat McAfee. If they wanted to move on from John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan, which I've gotten zero indication that they want to do, how quickly would it be before another team hires them? Pat McAfee also said, there's no worries over in the Bay Area, right? And Adam Schefter had said, no, I don't think so. So saying pretty definitively, he's not hearing anything that the seat beneath Lynch or Shanahan is hot. My take, I know I've been negative about this football team, and people have ripped me for being negative about the Niners. They've lost 3 games in a row. They've lost back-to-back games, 38-10, 35-10. They are 5-7. They're going to miss the playoffs in a Super Bowl year in which they were Super Bowl favorites, and they have been awful in every phase of the game, from the front office too, down to the coaching staff to the roster. And you want me to be positive? No, I'm always going to keep it a buck, and if the truth hurts you, that's your problem. But I would not fire John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. I don't think you should let the ugliness of this year blind you from the success that the Niners have had. Look, outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, any organization among the 32 teams in the NFL would take 4 NFC title game appearances and 2 Super Bowl trips in 5 years. That is an incredible run. Now, some people might say, well, Chase, Kyle Shanahan's in his 8th year, and the Niners are about to miss the playoffs for the 4th year in that 8-year run. Still, every other year, you're a Final Four team or a Final Two team. That's a great place to live. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are big reasons for that. Now, to make San Francisco great again, I don't think the Niners have to tear it down to the studs. I don't think they need to rebuild. I do think they need to reset and retool a little bit. I don't think this gap between being a contender and where they are now is an ocean. I don't think it's as deep as an abyss. I think that the gap is somewhat small, and there are a couple of things that the Niners can do to get back to competing for a Super Bowl. Hire Robert Saleh as a defensive coordinator. You need a leader. You need a good defensive mind. You need some juice and energy back on that sideline. The sideline looks defeated right now. They look spiritless. It's sad. And so Nick Sorensen is not it. If Kyle Shanahan pitches to Jed York that he wants to bring back Nick Sorensen as DC, I'd fire him on the spot. So hire a new defensive coordinator, bring back Robert Saleh. The familiarity, I think, will serve this organization well. The results haven't been there for Brian Schneider. Fire him as special teams coordinator. For Kyle Shanahan, the offense is a little bit predictable. It's a little bit stale. It's a little bit vanilla. The red zone offense has not nearly been as good enough, and they've really struggled with all of these different moving parts. Hire an offensive coordinator and bring in a fresh set of eyes to bring some creativity and some new concepts, some new thoughts to Kyle Shanahan. He has to get rid of his stubbornness a little bit and be a little bit more malleable. I would rebuild the offensive line. So long, Aaron Banks. Ben Barch, good game last night. Jake Brendel at center, take care. Colton McKivitz, wish I never knew you. The Niners have to get younger, and they have to bring in more depth along the defensive line. I would draft a young tight end behind George Kittle. Final year of his contract in 2025. I'd extend him, but you need a better backup tight end. Deommodore Lenoir, Renardo Green, they're your future at outside corner. Let Mooney Ward walk. You'll have to add depth at cornerback, linebacker, safety, and I would let these young wide receivers develop. Now, Ricky Pearsall, since that long touchdown against Tampa Bay and a couple of catches on that game-winning drive, was really good. Since then, really hasn't done much. But I'd get rid of Deebo, and I'd tinker with that wide receiver room a little bit. That being said, a reason why you're all frustrated and a reason why I see where you're coming from, the last 2 weeks, the Niners' effort has been poor. They're not playing with the physicality and the swagger that's been the backbone of this team over the last several years. That was a pathetic, piss-poor performance on Sunday Night Football, so you have the right to be enraged. That's why I asked you to just take your anger out on that thumbs-up icon. And a lot of people are posing that question. Has Kyle Shanahan lost the locker room? They're not playing hard. They look lost. They look broken. George Kittle saying, I have no idea why I had one catch early and then I ran 6 routes the rest of the game. Not a great look, but George Kittle has also had the back of Kyle Shanahan as well. Now, Shanahan is not without his faults. That is for sure. He has had a bad coaching season, but think about everything that's transpired for this organization this year. And think about the things that have been stacked up against the Niners. When you just think about the offensive side of the football, Brandon Aiyuk out for the year. Trent Williams has been injured. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, they have been hurt. Aaron Banks now out. Ricky Pearsall shot in the chest. Christian McCaffrey, bilateral Achilles tendonitis, didn't come back until after the bye week. He's now out again with the PCL injury. Defensively, Nick Bosa has missed the last couple of games. Javon Hargrave out for the year. Mooney Ward had to deal with the tragic loss with this family. Fred Warner, broken ankle that he suffered all the way back in week 4. Talanoa Hufanga has barely played it all the last 2 years. And so San Francisco has had to deal with a lot, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a coach and a general manager who'd be able to overcome all of that. And this is so heartbreaking, these stories here involving Trent Williams and Charvarius Ward, and in a way, this is the sick reality component of life. It's kind of a microcosm of the disaster of a season it's been for San Francisco and the season from hell that this has been for the Niners in the aftermath of that Super Bowl loss. A few weeks ago, Charvarius Ward saw his 1-year-old daughter pass away. Trent Williams and his wife just announced that they lost twin boys. One was lost during pregnancy, and the other one had passed away at birth. Can you imagine that? How crushing and heartbreaking is that? And this is all of the adversity that the Niners have had to deal with this year. It's unbelievable how the cards and the odds have been stacked against them every step of the way. But you want to look at an example for how the Niners can turn it around, why you should have hope? Remember the Philadelphia Eagles last year? They started 10-1, and then they lost 6 of 7. They were disjointed offensively, one of the worst units in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball. They were a mess. Fans wanted Nick Sirianni fired. Fans were doubtful that Jalen Hurts was the quarterback. They hired 2 new coordinators. They tinkered the roster. They hit on their draft. They hit in free agency. They hit on those coordinators. And all of a sudden, they flushed that Super Bowl hangover. Now, they are a 10-2 football team, number 2 seed in the NFC. They're rolling on offense. They have the number 1 overall defense in the NFL, and a lot of the core players who they had last year who were looking beat up. They were looking slow. They were looking listless. They're back playing key roles this year. The Niners can undergo a similar offseason where they flush this 2024 and get back to championship contention in 2025. It's not impossible. So with that, I ask you this. Are you hopeful that the Niners can turn it around in 2025? H for hopeful, D for doubtful. You think this organization needs to tear it down and rebuild? As always, I want to hear from you down in the comment section right now. Today's San Francisco 49ers Report is sponsored by our friends at Game Time. How awesome were the atmospheres for the NFL slate on Thanksgiving? On Friday night, were you watching that game in Athens between Georgia and Georgia Tech, which went 8 overtimes, the second longest college football game ever? Those fans were riding the seesaw and the roller coaster of that ball game, going back and forth. And then how about Saturday? Michigan, Ohio State in Columbus. You had Texas A&M in College Station. The atmospheres there were awesome. How about going to Lambeau Field or being a part of Bills Mafia? If you want to be a part of those games, download the Game Time app. And you can find tickets to sporting events like that, but also concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and more. You get $20 off when you use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS. That's $20 off when you use the code CHATSPORTS. Terms apply. First purchase only. You want to go to a Niners game? They do return home against the Chicago Bears. They're in desperate need of a win. They've lost 3 games in a row. They are 3.5-point favorites. Plenty of tickets available at Levi's Stadium. So download the app, create an account, use that code CHATSPORTS. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. We'll put all of this information down below in the show notes and attached to the pinned comment of today's San Francisco 49ers Report. And with that, to the back half of the show, a lot of injury updates coming in on this Monday afternoon. And we begin with Christian McCaffrey. His dad, Ed McCaffrey, former All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, was on the Kay Adams show. And he said that Christian McCaffrey has a PCL sprain. He will get an MRI on Monday. Hopefully it's not too serious. More information on that coming up here in just a moment. But I want to take you inside what it's like to be a part of a football family and how these injuries affect the player, but affect the family as well. Like Ed McCaffrey said, when I saw McCaffrey go down, his son Christian, he felt as though somebody ripped out his heart. And this is Christian McCaffrey, who went overseas to get that treatment on his Achilles tendonitis and didn't come back until after the bye week. And last year, NFL Offensive Player of the Year, top 5 MVP voting. He was on the Madden cover. He had a tremendous season, and this is a guy who loves ball, starting with how his father raised him. And so this is a football family. And when McCaffrey did all of that to come back, and then was looking great, and then got hurt again, now his season is lost, it's just brutal for the family. And Ed McCaffrey backing that up, he also added that when tragedy strikes, you get through it, and that is what Christian McCaffrey is going to do. And Christian McCaffrey's work ethic is a big reason why he's the player that he is. His dad even saying, I don't know if there's anybody on the planet who does as much as he does to get ready to play. If you're just lounging around, watching YouTube, scrolling through, you have nothing to watch, although check out Yellowstone. New season is out. And then Landman, also written by Taylor Sheridan. Great show as well. But if you're on the YouTube app, just look up some of Christian McCaffrey's sprinting workouts. And the technical aspect of those goes to show you his mental process and everything that he does to get ready to play. This dude approaches ball in a one-of-one, very unique manner. That's why he's great. What the PCL is basically, I was watching some videos on this last night after the watch party. You have the ACL, which is obviously a very common injury. The PCL pretty much has the opposite effect of the ACL. So the ACL is on the front of the knee. The PCL is on the back of the knee. And to see McCaffrey go down, it sucked, given what he's overcome to play. And then he was balling out against Buffalo. He looked like the player who we saw last year, who changed this Niners offense really since that trade in 2022. And then boom, all of a sudden, after that long run, that's where he got injured. Upended, shoestring tackle, landed on that knee. It's all over. So on the Niners injury report here, no surgery for McCaffrey. That is the good news, but the Niners are placing him on IR. He's going to be out 6 weeks. There are not 6 weeks left to go in the year. Niners aren't making the playoffs, so McCaffrey's season is over. What also stinks is that Jordan Mason, who I would have loved to have seen more of when McCaffrey was back as a running back rotation, but also with now McCaffrey out, he's being placed on IR with a high ankle sprain. So the number one running back for San Francisco now is going to be rookie Isaac Guerendo. Kevin Givens, backup defensive lineman. He tore his pec. He too is out for the year. What a brutal season for San Francisco. Under Kyle Shanahan, since he was hired in 2017, they have been top 10 in injury rate every single year, except for last year. They were the fourth healthiest team. I'm willing to bet they're going to be the number one most injured team in the National Football League here in 2024. So much adversity. As for where the Niners stand right now, they have lost those 3 games in a row, choked against Seattle, dominated by Green Bay, dominated by Buffalo. That dropped San Francisco to 5-7. They're not making the playoffs, and they're not going to win this division. They are now 2 whole games back of Seattle atop the NFC West, and at this point, this is just way too much to overcome. And you think about this playoff picture here. Detroit going to get most likely the number 1 or number 2 seed, right? They could drop back with the Vikings and the Packers on their heels. The NFC North is not determined yet. But you also have Philadelphia. They've won 8 games in a row. They are 10-2. And so those 2 teams, or at least another team from the NFC North, seem to be jockeying for the number 1 spot. But because the NFC North is so loaded with Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, 2 teams from the NFC North are going to occupy a wild card spot. And then the next best division record-wise is the NFC East. You have to imagine Washington is going to take that 3rd wild card spot. So even if the Niners win out and they go 10-7, 1, I don't think they win the division with that. 2, they're not going to be a wild card team. I think only 1 team from the NFC West gets in. And who's it going to be? Is it going to be Seattle? Is it going to be Arizona? The Rams are still in the mix there at 7-6, only a game back. But San Francisco, they've just shot themselves in the foot too often as far as not being able to finish games. And then injuries have just crushed this football team. Before we hop on out of here, be sure to give me a follow on X and Instagram. I put out so much Niners content on my social media pages. You can find me at Chase_Senior. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you in a bit here on the show.